Welcome to Behind the Crown Podcast with your hosts, Brian Hudson and Josh Griffin. Sit back and enjoy these great stories and memories of the Kingsmen Quartet.
Welcome to another great episode of Behind the Crown Podcast, a very special episode, as a matter of fact. Brian, this is going to be another great one, but go ahead and tell us about this one, sir.
This podcast is dedicated to the message, the men, and the music of the mighty Kingsmen Quartet. And the Kingsmen are celebrating 70 years in 2026. And we dedicated this podcast to honoring the guys that were there and the songs. And I will ask one question, Josh, before we start rolling. And I think you know what the question's going to be. But today, what got me triggered on this, today I went and had some good Chinese food. Okay.
Oh,
There's a local Chinese food just right down the street. And, when you get your bill, when they bring you the bill, they bring you those little fortune cookies, Yep. Well, I popped that fortune cookie open, Josh, that they gave me. And that little piece of paper, it said, "What is the useless information for the podcast tonight?"
Yes.
And I said, man, that's unbelievable. That little piece of paper said that. So, Josh, what is a piece of useless information that we have?
Yes. The praying mantis is the only known insect that can rotate its head from side to side. Yep.
Wow. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
See, those who are joining us, and plus our guest, we're not introduced him yet. We get a piece of useless information every week because most guys have useless information, lots of it in our brain that other people will say, or even our wives will say, "Why do you care about stuff like that?" We just do, But Josh, I have a piece of useless information that I need to share.
Right. Yeah.
We interviewed Greg Fox several episodes ago,
Yes.
and the useless information you used for Greg Fox was something about you can't something about a rat tickling rats. You remember that one?
Yes.
It was rats are very ticklish or something. That piece of information.
Yeah.
Well, I found one along those same lines. Okay.
All right.
Ancient Romans used powdered mouse and rat brains for toothpaste.
Wow.
Ancient Romans used powdered mouse and rat brains for toothpaste. I wonder if Greg Fox is going to use rat brains for toothpaste. I'm just
If
maybe
he
so.
does,
I don't know.
He's a tough man. If he does,
is a tough man.
Yeah.
He's a mountain man.
Mountain man. Yeah.
Living up there in the mountains,
Yeah.
But
Goodness.
anyway, let's get to the episode. You mentioned a moment ago, this is a special episode. It really is. This will be our third tribute episode to former members of the Kingsmen, the guys that have passed on. We've done one on Eldridge Fox, the late great owner of the Kingsmen, Eldridge Fox, baritone singer, managed the group for several years. We did one on Big Jim Hamill. He was the spokesman for the Kingsmen for about 24 or 25 years, lead singer, arranged a lot of the songs, called the programs, and also just a dynamic, probably greatest MC ever in gospel music. And he also was a fantastic lead singer. And this episode is dedicated to the one and only, the little giant, Ernie Phillips. Ernie was a hero of mine. And I tell you, of all the years that I traveled on the road, and even before that, you would hear things about people and then when you get on the Kingsman bus, you hear stories that were passed down from decades and decades. And I never heard anything negative ever about Squire Parsons and Ernie Phillips. Yeah. And then when I got to meet Ernie, it was like a dream come true. I was fanboying. Let me just tell you, I was a fanboy when I met Ernie Phillips. He probably thought, who is this crazy guy that's attacking me here in the lobby in Asheville, North Carolina at our 40th the beyond it was the final reunion we did on video. And I ran out there and I'm just like stuttering, stammering over my words, trying to talk to the little giant because he was such a hero of mine. So but we're going to talk about him tonight. We have a lot of great stories to tell on him, and we have some clips at the end of this episode from the guys that we've interviewed so far. And I thought when we were starting planning this, Josh, I thought, who could we bring on here that knew Ernie Phillips better than anybody in the world?
Yeah,
and we've invited his son, Eric, to join us tonight. Eric, man, it is we are so honored that you joined us tonight.
Hey, I'm honored that you have asked me to do this. This is awesome.
Well, you know, your dad, of course, we know nobody's perfect. And I know we all have our faults and failures. And we all have, you know, things in our life. And like I said, nobody's perfect. But uh, your dad was such a hero to me. And I'm very careful as a kid. I would say so and so's my hero. Or you know somebody, and I started to look up as a teenager. I started looking up to gospel singers as my hero, and I would say,
Yeah.
"Man, that guy's my hero. That guy's my hero." But over the
Yep.
last several years, I have discovered that we're all human, and it's really
Yes.
come as reality. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all
Yeah.
say dumb things and do dumb things. So I'm very careful anymore who I say my heroes are. I can say, you know, I really appreciate that guy's gift and talent or that person's gift and talent, but I'm really careful who I say my hero. But I will say
Yeah.
this publicly that Ernie Phillips was one of my heroes. So
No, wow.
Yes.
anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get
Yes.
emotional. We're gonna start the interview tonight. So,
Yeah.
but man, seriously, thank you for joining us. I know
Yes.
your
Yes.
time at home is very valuable, and so we are honored you have joined us tonight. First question, you know, you're an amazing tenor by your,
Yeah.
you
Lord,
know,
yeah.
I think the first time really remember hearing you sing the Melody Masters. Was that before Mark Trammell, or is that
That was
between?
before
In
Mark.
between.
That was before Mark.
Okay.
So I actually left the Melody Masters to go with Mark in
Okay. Gotcha.
2000, I think 2002, 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I first heard you was using Melody Masters. And
Yeah.
You know,
great.
before that, uh, interesting. I tried when Parker Jonathan
Okay.
was with the Kingsmen with you.
Right.
I think Andrew on the piano, Jerry Martin.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I went out one weekend with you guys just to have fun. Do
I
you remember
remember
that?
that.
Oh.
And that was before I was singing. You know, I was probably just out of high school,
Okay.
and I went. You know, Parker had asked me if I wanted to go, and I went with you guys. I think we was up north somewhere, and I think we was in West Virginia somewhere.
Yeah.
I remember you guys called me on the stage to sing "He's All I Need" because that was like one of the only songs that I felt comfortable. You know, because I was
Yes.
a little bit, but just I was very shy about my singing. But that was a memory for me being able to do that with you guys.
I remember that. I remember that. I
Wow.
remember
Probably
that.
around 90s, 97, 98.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
99, somewhere right in there.
Yeah. Andrew came in. Andrew came in 97, and
Okay.
Chris Collins. Well, yeah, Jerry Martin came in March of '98. So yeah.
Would have been after
Wow.
98.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Wow.
Interesting.
Well, if anybody has any video of this, we need to see this. That would be great, I imagine, to hear. Yeah.
Well, you know what, man, I wish.
Yeah.
Seriously, Eric, I wish we had a phone. I had cameras back then. You know,
Yeah.
way to, you know, video things easier. You know, it'd have been, that would have been great. But I do remember that. But you know, you sang for years and years and got a great tenor voice, and
Yeah.
I remember hearing you. I remember one time we sang with, and you were with Mark, and you were singing just a little closer home. You guys had did that song, and you hit the note, and there are certain tones. I said, that's Ernie right there. That's Ernie. Certain tones, and but you're just a dynamic singer, man. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
but
Thank
so
you.
if you can, as best you can, usually one of the first questions we ask each guy is, as best you can, where did your dad's love for music start? Do you know where it started
So
for him?
I had conversations with him about this growing up as well as family. And after he passed away, that's when we really started talking with family about his younger years and how he
Yeah.
got involved in music. So I'd always heard the story when he was like elementary school age. He had a talent for singing. And back then they would have they'd set him up on a or stand him up on a table and he would sing Elvis
Okay.
songs. So in elementary
Okay.
school at these little programs, like I don't know what the
Yeah.
program would be, but they knew he had a talent for singing. And so he would young, he would do that. Then as he got older, he would sing in trios, just at the local church.
Right.
Um, and then I think there was a group I'm not sure if this was high school or maybe just out of high school,
Okay.
called the Carriers,
Okay.
in West Virginia. So he was always, um, he was around music and liked music from the time he was young, and then the gospel music just started to get into that
Yeah.
as a young boy and teenager. Uh, my uncle, Larry, uh, so Larry married my dad's sister, Lana. They were friends in school, and he's
Okay.
told some stories how they would be in middle school, high school. My mama and papa would take them to concerts.
Yeah.
Blackwood Brothers. They would sit and listen to Blackwood Brother albums. See who else did he say back then? Oak Ridge Boys. Dad was a
Okay.
big fan of the Oak Ridge, the gospel.
Yeah. Oh, the
Oak
gospel.
Ridge.
Yeah.
So just always had a love for the music, and then started with the Carriers, and then went off to the military,
Yeah.
back and started singing with a group called the Crossmen.
Okay.
And that'll they're Beckley, West Virginia.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I think he was with the Crossmen while he was working full time at the VA, and then got the call from the Kingsmen to come and try out. So
Gotcha.
it started the music started years ago when he was young, and then
Yeah.
carried over, and just had that love for gospel music, and of course it just had the opportunity, and got the call from the Kingsmen and tried out, and then did that for several years. So
And like you said, he was also. How long was he in the military, Eric? Do you have any idea?
I think he was there 3 years, three or
Okay.
4 years.
Okay. I think I read somewhere at one point he served in Germany. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm definitely proud that he served in the military, and I our veterans should be recognized way
Yep.
more than they are.
Yeah.
And and you mentioned the audition, and normally Josh always asks, because that's one of Josh's things. He
Yeah.
always wants to know how the audition happened. And so today I thought, man, you probably wouldn't know what. So I reached out to Greg Fox. We already mentioned him about a dozen times already tonight. He's kind of the Kingsman historian. And I said,
He was there.
yeah, I said, Greg, I said, do you remember Ernie's audition? And he sent me a list of things that he said it was done at Foxy's house, Elder's living room. Of course, there's a story on the Chattanooga Live album about your dad pulling in the driveway, and Hamill said he got a step ladder and got down out of the car.
Yeah.
So but I thought, well, I wonder how much truth is in some of this. But he said that he said Squire, Foxy, and Nick Bruno really ran the tryout. That Jim Hamill acts as setback and just chimed in. I guess he wanted to listen. He wanted to stand back and listen and watch. But he said, "Here's the songs that your dad auditioned with: Walking with Jesus, great song.
Mhm.
I'd rather be an old time Christian. Jesus, I love you.
Yeah.
Glory Road. Look for me at Jesus' feet." And he said something. About with the original version of "Look for Me at Jesus' Feet," when Johnny recorded it on Big and Live, they really kind of kept it down. They didn't really put the big ending on the song. And he said during the rehearsal when your dad was auditioning, that's when Hamill changed the arrangement, and they did the big power ending. Da 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 da. He said that's kind of when they changed it. And in fact, he said Nick Bruno wasn't crazy about that. Bruno didn't like that. So,
That's funny.
but so yeah,
No.
Glory Road, Look for Me at Jesus' Feet, Shouting Happy,
Yeah.
and I've Made a Covenant. And
Okay.
he said Ernie was a big fan of Willie Wynn.
Exactly.
Okay.
I had that written down.
Okay.
That's like his all-time favorite tenor singer.
Yeah. Well, see,
Wow.
I love knowing stuff like that. I
Yep.
love knowing. I want to know my favorite singers, who they looked up to. Well, so he said he brought an arrangement that Willie Wynn and the Tennesseans did because he lives, and I guess that where Willie sang the verses, and so your dad used that same arrangement that he loved it so much, and then Greg said that Squire had your dad sing "Just in Time" and "In Some Sweet Day," which is the great tenor feature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've never heard that story myself. That's it's interesting.
yeah, so
That is
those were the songs that were kind of sung, and of course, we've talked about this. Josh and I have talked about this on countless podcasts. If you're being a tenor, if you're going to audition for a tenor position, you're probably going to end up singing "Glory Road" for your audition.
That's right.
It's a given. It's a given. So that's kind of what how the audition process went that day. So that's pretty cool.
That is cool. Now, so if he was offered the job, like right after the audition, or was it, hey, go to the house and we'll?
I don't know.
Thank
I
you.
don't know.
Oh.
Well, but Hamill on the story, of course, Hamill said, he said we were standing around the piano. He said I didn't like him none. And he said, I just want to send him home. And he said, well, I looked over at him, saw the tears rolling down his face as they saw about Jesus. And he said, I knew right then we had us one.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a Kingsman fan, dude. I know all I know your dad's intros. So, but yeah, I wouldn't think they would send him home, man. I wouldn't let the little giant get out of that room that day
No.
without it offering him that job, man. So
That's right.
that's pretty cool. Well, we've got some questions, and just see if you know any of these answers. All right, Josh.
Yeah. During his Kingsman tenure, do you know if your dad had a favorite song that he liked to sing?
So I don't know about the tenure with the Kingsmen.
Yeah.
If he had a favorite. I know just in talking and doing some solo stuff, he liked a couple of the hymns that were his favorites, like "What If We Have in Jesus," "How Great Thou Art." I know the Chattanooga Live with Ocean Zion. That was impactful, and I think that was his first live album.
Yeah.
So, but those are the songs that come to mind that I know we had conversations about, not specific
Right.
Kingsman songs.
Yeah. Well, I think on Chattanooga Live he actually sang "What a Friend We Have in Jesus."
Okay.
Yeah.
There
at the end. Yeah.
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 No.
Do you know if he had a least favorite song?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He never was negative like that. If you heard a song and I never heard him just say he didn't like a song. Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
let's see. Probably knowing Ernie, he probably didn't. He probably just go with it and just make the best out of it. Yeah, that's right.
Back in those
Just a
days
great
when they
guy.
called the song, you sang them whether you liked them or not. You sang
That's right.
anyway.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Well, do you know if he had a favorite album that he ever recorded? Was there ever one that really he ever?
I don't know that either.
Okay.
Because let's see, I had my favorites that I would talk to him growing up, and he would obviously, we would have conversations about them, and I remember him talking about how, because when I first started singing, it seems like crowds weren't as big as they were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So we would have conversations about that, and so I would bring up the live albums that I knew about, like Chattanooga, Alabama, Live Actually, and we would just talk about the environment and the electricity, in those concerts, and he would talk about how it was just such energy, in those albums, specifically Alabama, the Alabama Live and the Live Naturally, but don't know for sure like a specific album that was his favorite.
Okay.
It was one of his favorite things about life on the road, traveling with the Kingsmen.
So just in conversation with him in the past, the people, it'd have to be the people. He was a people person.
Yes.
We really enjoyed, not just because I have to, and this is part of what we do. He really enjoyed people and encouraging people, God's people.
Yeah.
So if I had to guess, like I said, we never had a conversation. This is my favorite thing about the road, but I know he liked the people and he liked to encourage people in song while he was traveling.
And we've heard so many stories, Eric, from fans who said Ernie Phillips took time to talk to me.
Right. That's one of the biggest things. Yeah. So when I started, that's what they would tell me, and it's funny just the impact that that even today, 2025. Just a quick story, just kind of goes along the same. My son, he applied for a job down here at St. Clair County, which is in Alabama, just down from Gadsden.
Okay.
Back in the summer, and he was at a sheriff's office down there. He's trying to follow in Dad's footsteps.
Right.
So he applied at a jail. He's 18 years old. He was in his interview, and one of the guys said, "Well, now we've heard your dad was a singer. Tell us about that." Well, there was another man in the interview room that just started listening. He said, "So what's your dad, Ernie or Eric Phillips?" And he said, "That's my." He said, "Well, your granddad is Ernie Phillips?" And he looked down the aisle to another guy that was sitting. He said, "You need to go home and tell your parents that you are sitting here with Ernie Phillips' grandson."
Yeah.
So see him at the Fireman Sing in Tuscaloosa back in the 80s, early 80s.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's how long, it's from early 80s to 2000, back 25.
Yes.
People still, he had an impact because they talked about about that with him even, at that job interview, so yeah, I really do think he loved the people, and it wasn't a put on. He really enjoyed people. So
Yeah, and like I told you a moment ago, man, I'm out there fanboying, and what it was, I went out to the lobby, and he's out there talking to 3 or 4 fans, and he was so patient with them. You know, he didn't turn his eyes from them. Like, and when you're talking to some people and they're turned away from you,
right.
they're done with you in the conversation. He stayed right with them, focused with them, and
Yeah.
and then after they walked away, that's when I approached him, and I was slobbered all over myself trying to talk to Ernie Phillips. And so, but you're exactly
Yeah.
right. He took time for people, and
And
yeah,
he would tell me when I started, and I'm a lot like my dad anyway, and
yeah,
I enjoy people. But I remember me and him having conversations about that when I started. He said, son, just always give people time.
yeah.
If it weren't for these people, you wouldn't be singing to anybody anyway. So
That's
just
right. Exactly right.
give them the time. They want to ask questions, whether it's about singing, about songs, about what. Just be nice to the people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
that's
And I'll
great.
mention as well, I met him in 2016. He was filling in with the Kingsmen, and, he didn't have to take time to talk to me because I basically say, done his time and was a legend already. But like you say, Brian, he made time and talked to me and let me have my picture made with him and get my picture took with him on the cruise again a couple weeks after that in
Oh,
2016. So yeah,
that's
yep.
that's
And
Absolutely.
he became my favorite tenor singer right then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yep.
before we move on, I do have some stats about your dad.
Yeah.
Okay, and this might take a minute, so bear with me. He joined in 1977. Okay, there he became known as the Little Giant. Was he ever called that before that? I don't think he was. Was he?
I don't think he was. I think that started with the Kingsmen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. He became known as the Little Giant in 77. He was nominated for favorite tenor for 6 years in a row. He actually won favorite tenor in 1980 and 81. He recorded these are Kingsman albums, just a little closer home in 1977. And off that album, they had a top 10 song, Just in Time, in 1977. They also had Old Camp Meet with the Devil, one of my favorite Kingsman tunes. That was a top 10 song in 1977. They recorded Chattanooga Live in 77. That won Album of the Year in 78. And The Old Ship of Zion was a top 10 song in 1978. Then they recorded The Upper Window, one of my favorite records. I've Got a Reservation was a top 10 song in 1979. From Out of the Past, they recorded also that year in 1979. And a song called Satisfied was a top 10 song in 1980. And also from Out of the Past won Southern Gospel Album of the Year in 1980. They won Favorite Group in 1980. Ring the Bells of Freedom was recorded in 1980. And the title song, Ring the Bells of Freedom, was a top 10 song in 1980. Live Naturally came in 1981, and that's got the longest running #1 song in gospel music history. Excuses, that was a #1 song in 1981. They also won favorite male quartet or traditional male quartet in 1981. Then they did a record called Your Ride Is on the Way. That was in 1982. Then they did an album with Reverend Grady Nutt, the comedian,
Mhm.
and that's a great album cover. They got your dad holding up the globe,
Yeah.
and that was recorded in 1982. And then the Live from the University of Alabama, that was recorded in 1983. And they had their first #1 song, Saints Will Rise. That was a #1 song in '83. And then off that album also was Child Child in 1984. That was a top 10 song. And
Mhm.
then your dad was inducted into the Southern Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 2019.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I
that's cool.
that's a long and
That's
that's
Yeah.
cool
and
stats.
Eric, that's not even counting the 3 for 10s they did. You know, they back in those days they were cutting a 3-pack probably
Right.
every 6-8 months.
Yeah. I would pull out some of those 8 tracks and listen years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like I like the one they did. It was something about was it cowboy something, cowboy camp meeting or something.
I
And
remember
Yeah.
I remember the cover with the cowboy hats and
yeah,
boots and everything.
That was great. Yeah, that was great.
Yep.
So those are some stats on your dad
Yes.
during his time with the Kings.
Yeah. Speaking of singers again, do you know any particular singers? I know you mentioned Willie Wynn. Any
Abs-
others that inspired
So
your dad?
I know Willie Wynn was his a tenor singer that he looked
Yeah.
up to, and I don't know what year this would have been. This was when I was grown and
Okay.
already moving out of the house. But apparently, Willie Wynn would have like a friends meeting or
Okay.
he would call friends to come and they would have like once a year come together. And I think Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area.
Okay.
And he called dad to come to one of those. And I just remember him talking to me about, just him getting to actually sit down and talk with Willie Wynn after all of those years. And that was
Wow.
for him.
Wow.
Okay.
But he really did like him. And then after meeting him and getting to know him, it just made it better, for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
Also, I would hear him talk about Bill Shaw. Was that
Okay.
Blackwood?
Yeah, Bill Shaw, the
Okay.
Blackwood Brothers. Yeah.
He liked him. He liked non-tenor, but Smitty Gatlin.
Yes, Betty Gatlin. Yeah.
Was that Oak Ridge Boys? I think.
Oak Ridge Boys. Yeah.
Okay, he liked his voice. Um, the Prophets. There was a tenor singer, maybe
Big Lou.
Big Lou.
Big Lou.
That's
Yeah.
it. He liked that tenor singer, but the one Rosie Roselle.
Yeah, Rosie. Yeah.
But he did follow Willie Wynn. That was his.
Wow.
And I started after he told me that. I would try to pull some things, and he sounds a little bit like Willie Wynn
He does. He
to
does.
me, and I think he just kind of that's what he kind of told
Yeah.
himself after back in those days anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Eric. Oftentimes when singers they kind of pull a little bit from this guy's voice and this person's voice and this person's voice and makes your voice. So give us an idea. Who did you like listening to? I mean, who were some of your singers?
So all right. So this is what's funny. When I was growing up, I really didn't. I wasn't into the gospel music.
Okay.
I wasn't into it. When I was very little. See, Dad was with the Kingsmen. I was born in '79, so I was so little when he
Yeah.
was with the Kingsmen. Everything I remember was from records.
Got you. Okay.
Which I did listen to, but I didn't. I was about 17, 18 when I really started listening
Yeah.
to records and get into music. So at that point, obviously, it was Dad. I enjoyed and I tried to match tones
Yeah.
with him. Danny Funderburk,
Okay.
Brian Free. I
Yeah.
liked it, Brian, but he's got a tone of his own. There was no matching his tone.
Right. True.
You
That's true.
He's
Yeah.
just got his own tone. But
Yeah.
I liked his voice.
Yeah.
So Ernie Haas,
Okay.
again, it was hard tone wise. I have a lot of my dad's tones
Yeah.
later.
Right.
Starting out, I didn't have a tone. And I would I can remember trying to get him to help me, find the placement, and I want to sing tenor. And it was a struggle. I'm surprised.
Wow.
I'm surprised he hired me. To be honest with you, but it was just over time I was able to develop
Yeah.
develop some of those tones and singing correctly. And
Yes.
I remember Dad. He would pull out. There was a guy in Asheville. His name was Mr. Brookshire. Have you ever heard
Okay.
of Mr. Brookshire? He was a vocal coach.
I've heard of him. Yes.
Okay, so I remember going with Dad to that vocal coach when he would, he would pull out tapes that they would record their vocal coach, session.
Yeah.
He would give me those tapes, to try to help me develop
Yeah.
into that. And it was just a bunch of scales and
Yeah.
what you would imagine you'd be doing it with a vocal coach.
Right.
But yeah, that was my hero, too. So I really was trying to
Yeah.
do some of the things that he did, and I was just
Right.
it was a struggle because especially young, I just didn't have it. I didn't have
Yeah.
the tones. And I tell people, even I don't like to hear myself sing now, but it was probably around the time that Dustin Sweatman came with Mark, and Dustin, that I really started to find those tones.
Yeah.
And just I don't know if it just took a while for my voice to mature and callous or
Probably.
what. But anyway, yeah,
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I wondered, if how you got your voice. Like I said, singers, and I tell singers this, and this ain't an interview about me, but I tell young singers it's okay to listen to certain singers, but try to be yourself.
Be yourself. That's right.
Find your voice. Find your voice because back when I was growing up, Ivan Parker and Mike English was the lead singers that were really hot back then.
Right.
And my dad said, "There's already an Ivan Parker. There's already Michael English.
Be
Get to
you.
you."
That's
So,
right.
so that's pretty cool. Okay.
That's right. Eric, do you know if maybe you and your dad talked about this? Was there a specific time that Mr. Ernie knew that this was what he wanted to do, gospel music?
We didn't, and I wish we would have.
Yeah.
Because I can only assume that when he was singing part time back in West Virginia with the Crossmen and in groups prior to that, I can only assume that's what he wanted to do. But I really I never can remember having a conversation that brought that. Is this exactly what happened, or was it just you were happy at the VA singing part time, but then you get the call and then chance but not your of a lifetime or whatever? I really don't know.
Yeah.
So I just assumed that he wanted to, and then the opportunity presented itself. But I really can't remember having a conversation about when that initial, this is what I want to do.
Yes. Yeah.
Remember that.
That's right.
Well, let me ask you this question. Your dad was a really good plumber. Okay. And I have a story about my wife had called me on the road. Okay. I was on the road and she called me. She said, "Honey, the kitchen sink is clogged up." And I said, "Well, I just wait till I get home." I said, "I'll be home for 4 days." And so I said, "Well, have you tried liquid plumber?" "I've tried liquid plumber." I said, "Have you tried the plunger?" "I've tried the plunger." So I get home and the stench is just terrible. The kitchen sink is clogged up. It's nasty, greasy, water and everything. And so I called Ray Dean. I said, "Cousin, I need a good plumber." He said, "Ernie Phillips is a good plumber." I said, "Ernie is?" He said, "Oh yeah, Ernie Phillips is a good plumber." So next thing I know, I call your dad, and next thing I know, your dad is under my sink trying to unclog my kitchen sink.
That doesn't surprise me.
And he eventually had to go down in the basement and take pipes apart because my wife had put a cheese ball down the kitchen sink. And let me just tell you, he was so kind and so gracious and so patient. So when she walked in from work, he put his arm around her and said, "Yvonne, whatever you do, don't put a cheese ball down the sink again." So your dad was a great plumber. So did he have any other hidden talents beside that?
So let me tell you a plumbing story real quick.
Okay.
So Dad, he was kind of a jack of all trades. He would just try. If YouTube would have been around back then, he'd have been great. But it didn't matter what it was, he would try to fix it, himself.
Okay.
But we had a pile water line bust at the house, and I was probably 18 or so.
Okay.
And he wanted to replace that because he's going to save money, number one, by doing it himself.
True.
And, we can do this. So he rents this ditch witch that you walk behind. All right. So, and I'm going to be the laborer, So I'm trying to move this ditch witch, the back of the house all the way down to the water meter. And we keep hitting this soap rock that there in Asheville. They had a lot of soap rock and that thing just wasn't cutting it. Well, to see him tell me how to, manipulate the ditch witch, I wasn't doing it right. And
okay.
So it was one of those stories. He's sitting there telling me, we need to do it like this. And I'm over here just, getting beat by the soap rock. And then he finally, comes over and because I think he just gets mad that I can't do it. And he starts having the same problem. So we wind up taking that one back and getting one that you sit on and digging that trench, all the way down.
Yeah, yeah.
He had so much patience. He literally got a shovel, just one of those small shovels, probably 2.5, 3 feet long. Got in the crawl space of the house, under the house, and dug under the footer to get that water line, main to come where it needed to in the house. So he could he would do some plumbing, and I think that was probably one of the only times that I said, I will never plumb with you again. We can do this together.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story.
He replaced that water line, in the house, and he would try stuff like that, whether it was stuff on the car. Now he wouldn't touch a lot of electrical,
Okay.
Stuff. Yeah, that plumbing, he'd give him a plumbing job and
Oh
he'd try
man,
to tackle it.
he knocked that thing. And I told her, I said, honey, that why did you put that down the sink? It'll never dissolve. And Ernie had to go in the basement and take pipes apart and get that thing out of there. And he was there probably 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I was thinking the greatest of all time
Yeah.
under my sink, fixing my kitchen sink. It was surreal,
Yeah.
since I was 8 years old, Ernie Phillips was the greatest singer in the
Yeah.
world to me. And there he was. So anyway, okay. All right, Josh, you got the next question.
Oh, goodness. We'll backtrack a little bit. I overlooked one a while ago.
Okay.
And, did he mention anything about maybe one of the least favorite things about life on the road, about being on the road?
I honestly not. I'd have to assume that too, and it would just be, probably being away from the family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
probably the days probably the days being gone,
Yeah.
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 Yes, sir. Yeah.
But I tell you, Dad was not a complainer. So I kind of, that's why it doesn't surprise that I didn't know if there was something that
Yeah.
he didn't like,
Yeah.
about.
Right.
That's why I'm just assuming because I know he's a family guy.
Right.
So that's why I say probably just being away from the family. So
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And we've heard stories of him getting up every morning and running
jogging.
every day,
Oh,
jogging and push-ups and sit-ups every single day.
he did
Wow.
that. I'm telling you, he did that until he got so sick he couldn't.
Really?
After that first cancer surgery,
Yeah.
it was bothering him that he couldn't do his setups
Yeah.
because he was cut, so far down to his stomach.
Yeah.
He eventually could do that, and eventually got back. He would, he was proud of it too. He could do those push-ups. He could do 50, 60
Wow.
push-ups in a row, even 65,
Yes.
66 after he got over
Yep.
those surgeries.
Wow.
But he liked to stay active,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he would jog. Now he slowed down a little bit, but he would he liked to
Still
run,
dog. Wow.
push-ups, setups, running. That was his thing. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Now,
Sir.
he and I, we have had conversations about how some of the guys would be golfing when he would be on the
Yeah.
road. He would be the one swimming. He wasn't a golfer. That's what
Yeah.
he wasn't a golfer back then. He would swim, but the older he got, he got into golf.
Got to golf. I never have got into golf. That was one of the first questions they asked me. You play golf? No. I don't have the patience for it. So
Oh, man, that's great. And I know you mentioned before, we'll change up something right quick. It just
Sure.
come to me. Tell us a little bit about that story when you got the news that Ernie was gonna be filling in with y'all
oh yeah.
back in the
In
early
2007, Jeremy Peace was leaving the Kingsmen, and he gave his notice. And that I was there with Philip Hughes at the time, and Ray, and of course the band. And so Ray Dean calls me one day and says, "Well, cousin, we ain't got our tenor yet, so we're gonna get Ernie Phillips to fill in." And I probably had to pick myself up off the floor. And I said, "Do what?" And he said, "Ernie Phillips is going to fill in with his cousin, so he'll be here on the bus this weekend. We leave." And I'm telling you what, it was so surreal getting to be on the stage with him. And we gave him about 6 songs to learn, and everything else, because we had the band, we were going to pull out the old Kingsman songs and just wear it out. And he went and sung the first weekend with us and did such a great job. He got sick when he got back home and got back on the bus the next week, and he said, "Guys, I've got some kind of a bronchitis or something."
Yeah.
And dude, he sang better. He sang better with bronchitis than 90% of the tenors in gospel music, and they weren't sick.
Yeah.
But it was so funny. The very first night he filled in, we're in Alabama at this church, and I got dressed and went in and to work the table. And I had just walked in the door, and this lady walks up. She says, "Oh, I'm so glad the Kingsmen are here tonight." I said, "Well, thank you." And she said, "Whatever happened to that little guy, Ernie Phillips?" And as she's saying that, he comes in the door and is walking past the table as she is saying, "Whatever happened to that little guy named Ernie Phillips?" And he's walking like he's going to the bathroom. And I said, "Right there he goes." And she screams like she had seen Elvis. Okay.
That's funny.
She screams and runs in the sanctuary, grabs her husband, and drags him out. And by that time, your dad is coming out of the restroom by the time they get there. And and you go back to the story about your dad having time for people. He stood there for probably 10 minutes and talked to those folks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
man,
that's
the
funny.
screams she let out seeing your dad live in person. But yeah, we sang, and I'd call songs like "We Do Not Die," and growing up hearing those songs on a record,
Yeah.
and then he's singing them.
Oh, yeah.
It was just so surreal. There was times I would forget where I was going, or I would forget what songs I'm trying to sing or call because I'm listening to him. He's down there, and it was just amazing. And I mean,
Yeah.
it was a dream come true.
Yeah.
And so the a little story, and we'll
Yeah.
continue on. Uh, he's in the hotel room one morning shaving. Okay, he just got in the room, and he's standing at the sink, and he's starting to lather his face up, and he starts shaving, and I start quoting word for word his introduction from Chattanooga Live. Okay. About the middle of January, that big old tall Texas boy named John Parrott decided it was time for him to stay home with his family. We had to find somebody to sing the ladies' part for the Kingsmen. And I'm going through the Hamill's complete introduction, and your dad's just starting to shave. And as I got about halfway through, he stopped. He put his razor down on the sink. He let me finish. And I said, "How about if a little giant Ernie Phillips, And he said, "You got way too much time on your hands." That's all he said. That's all he said, man. He was so kind about it. He let this kid be a fanboy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was great. It was great.
I love that story. Oh, Eric, I know you shared one a while ago, but you have another funny story about your dad?
Oh, goodness. Funny story. Hmm. Let me think.
Because we all know him as the singer, but
Yeah.
you've lived there with him. He was your daddy,
Well,
Yeah.
just specifically funny comes to mind. He was always around, always involved in everything that I had going on, and my sisters. He wasn't somebody that would come home from work and just kids go do your thing. He was always
Yeah.
involved. Whether he liked basketball, so I
Yeah.
growing up, we'd be out in the driveway shooting basketball.
Wow.
I remember when I was little playing football. We'd be in the side yard with my neighbors, and we'd be playing football together. When it was some time to drive, we were out looking at cars together. We weren't gonna buy one, but we was out trying them out just
Yeah. Yeah.
out some cars.
Yeah.
He was always involved and always
Yeah.
there, always an encourager. I'm sure if I'd have to sit here and think just long
Yeah.
enough to think of funny, stuff because he was a great sense of humor. Also.
Was he a prankster? Was he
Yeah.
kind of a prankster?
He was. I remember one time, matter of fact, we had a Halloween, what do you call it, trunk or treat
Yeah.
there in Asheville, and I forget who all was with the Kingsmen at the time, but somebody told him that some Kingsmen were coming to the trunk or treat there.
Okay.
So he dresses up as a woman.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, he's got this wig on. He dresses up as a woman, and I'm trying to remember what Kingsman it was. It seemed like it was somebody new, maybe a tenor that was
Okay.
named with somebody else that come to Trinity at the time.
Yeah.
And he went up and was talking to him like he didn't know who they were, and here he is dressed up like a woman at
Oh my
Halloween.
God.
So he just he
That's hilarious.
meet and had a good sense of humor and prank stuff like that.
Yeah.
He
That's
just
awesome.
he was something else.
That's awesome. Well, the live naturally where he talks about, where Hamill talks about, Ernie had slipped in the closet, and waited for Hamill to start taking his clothes off, and he jumped
Right.
out and scared him, and then you mentioned things like that. So yeah, it sounds like he was
Yeah.
certainly a prankster
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But we reached out. What I did was I reached out to some tenors.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned your dad inspired you and inspired so many singers, but I reached out to a few tenors that I know, and I wish I had thought of this earlier. I could have got a little more people involved. But here's some tenors that I reached out to that knew your dad. And the first one, I'm gonna Doyle Harper. Doyle is an incredible singer. Spent many years with the Dixie Echoes and the Trailblazers. A great tenor, great friend. He's pastoring now in Jacksonville, Florida. But he said Ernie was filling in with the Kingsmen a few years ago when they came to our church. I didn't have any idea that he was on the bus, and he was the first one to come out of the bus when they arrived. I was totally blown away. We sang together that night, and he called me up on Beautiful Home, an honor, the honor of a lifetime to stand beside a hero of mine.
Oh, wow.
And so that was Doyle Harper.
Yeah.
Um, a young man you might know, a fellow named Buddy Bates. He recently filled in with the well, he sang with the Dixie Melody Boys for a while, the Dixie Echoes. Great tenor singer, and he said this: I was singing with a group called the Stone Ridge Quartet, and we were singing at the East Coast Quartet Convention in Pennsylvania. I didn't know that little Ernie was there until it was time for us to take the stage. We had finished our set with "Oh What a Savior," and this guy's a tenor. And when I finished, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone jumping up and down, clapping. I had no idea it was one of my musical heroes. Ernie grabbed me when I came off the stage and started talking to me, so encouraging. I had mentioned that I had not heard anything with his son Eric singing with Mark Trammell Quartet. He said, "Let's go to my car." He said, we went to Ernie's car and he played me some songs featuring his son Eric. He was so proud of him. We
Mm.
sat in the car for 45 minutes listening and talking. He said, still to this day, I'm blown away by his kindness, encouragement, and love that he showed me. He didn't have to do that, but that's who he was. He was really the little giant. Okay.
Wow.
Yep.
And I've got one more I want to read, and then I'm gonna have Josh read some. Okay. This is from another former Kingsman tenor, Chris Collins.
Yeah.
And I talked to Chris today on the phone, and here's what he had to say. He said, I met Ernie at the National Quartet Convention at the Kingsman 40th reunion in 1995. He was certainly an influence on my life as a musician. And then when I met him, I found that he was kind and humble, and he was singing better than ever. He was amazing. He was always such an encouragement to me. He was kind and took time to talk to me,
Mm.
personable, down to earth. Ernie was just Ernie, no pretense or pride, just Ernie.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yep. Here's one from Billy Hodges, former tenor singer of the Florida Boys, Dixie Echoes, and Kingdom Airs. Ernie was a great friend and hero of mine. He sang on a solo project with me once and was always an encouragement when I needed some advice. He would find a way to point me to Jesus when I would call with questions. It was an honor to know him. I always said that if I could be half as good a singer and half as loved as him, I would be a success. His talent was endless and only overshadowed by his testimony and love for the Lord. He would always make you feel as if you were the only thing that mattered when he talked with you. He was a true gentleman and lived what he sung about. He is truly missed. That was Billy Hodges. Stephen Adair, tenor singer for Mark Trammell Quartet, said, I was at the NQC when the Kingsmen recorded their 40th anniversary video. I could still hear the crowd roar when Ernie was introduced and he sang his signature verse on We Do Not Die. I was on my feet practically that whole day while listening and watching after that performance. One of the albums that I grew up with was Chattanooga Live. The Little Giant was larger than life and quickly became one of my heroes. Almost a decade ago, I was finally able to meet Ernie when he filled in again with the Kingsmen. I was with the Dixie Echoes at the time, and we were booked the same night for Bill Bailey's winter convention. I heard Ernie was in the lobby helping set up the product table, so after sound check, I made a beeline to the lobby in hopes to meet him. I went to shake his hand, but instead he gave me a hug. I told him what an honor it was to meet him, but his unmistakable humbleness was on full display. That alone has stayed with me to this day. Ernie is the definition of unforgettable. That was Stephen Adair, the current tenor singer of the Mark Trammell Quartet.
Mm.
And then one more from David Sutton, tenor singer for Triumphant Quartet. As a young boy, I probably listened to the Kingsmen more than any other quartet. My dad was a tenor, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps. I remember many times I put on the Kingsmen record and listened to Love Lifted Me. I'd hear Ernie hit that high note, and I'd say, I want to do that. I sat at that piano many times hitting what I think was a double high B, if I remember correctly. I'm thankful for men like Ernie that inspired me at the age of 10 years old to sing gospel music one day. He definitely helped lead my path to becoming a tenor singer. I wish I could have known him better. I love when his son Eric came on the scene a few years back. He reminded me so much of his dad, Ernie. Anytime I mentioned his dad to him, he would light up just like I do when someone mentions my dad to me. We were both blessed to have tenor singer heroes in our lives like our dads. Ernie, in my opinion, will always go down as one of the most incredible tenors in the history of gospel music.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
from David Sutton of Triumphant Quartet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What a legacy, man. What a legacy,
Yeah.
you know? And,
Yes.
and, you know, and I think, and not to keep repeating myself, but, and you've said this too, Eric, it's about having time for people and making time for people. And yeah,
Yeah.
your dad was an incredible singer, and you know, Love Lifted Me, you know, the high note is a double high B, you know,
Yeah.
and that was all incredible. But I think
Yeah.
what made people love your dad so much was not
Yeah.
just the singing. Because we all know singers that are great, they're incredible, but they're not
Yeah.
very personable. They're
Yeah.
not, they don't take time for people. And usually those people are liked and their gifts are appreciated,
Yeah.
but they don't really we're not really loved by the fans. And
Right.
when you take time for people, that's what endured your dad to so many people. Because
Yeah.
we've said this 50 times on this episode tonight. He took time for people. You know,
Yeah.
Yes.
he was way more than just the entertainer and the singer and the gospel singer on the stage. He was real, and that's what made him loved, like he was. So,
Right.
Yes.
but well, over the last several episodes of this podcast, Eric, we've I would interview fellows that either got to travel with your dad or got to sing with your dad, or they just knew of him. And I would ask, hey, tell us about a little bit about Ernie. So the next few moments, we're going to play some clips
Okay.
of those guys telling a little bit about Ernie and how it was to travel with him. And so here's what they had to say.
I've got one of the coolest Ernie stories. Ernie, there's a lot of people don't know, Ernie was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer
Oh, I did not know that.
about 11 years before he died,
Wow.
and told to get his house in order
Yeah.
Yeah.
about 11 years before he
Yeah.
died.
Wow.
And so with the good Lord, he had beaten that and was in remission when he was back filling in for us. Of course, what got him was it came back and came back with a vengeance on him. But when I left the Kingsmen, Ernie was already real sick. I had seen him at NQC the year before,
Right.
and he had been doing treatments and all. His hair, he'd lost his hair and all that, but was still singing, just still the same old Ernie, just a little bit thinner, and had lost
Yeah.
his. We had the same hairdo for the first time.
Yeah.
And so I left the Kingsmen in June, and I got a letter in the mail, and I've got it in my office up there with a picture of us with Ernie singing, and it said basically, it was Bonnie had written it, his wife,
Okay.
and said that since Ernie had left the Kingsmen back whenever,
Yeah.
they recognized the needs. They were sensitive to a ministry's needs. And every year at Christmas, they chose somebody to be a little blessing to.
Okay.
And they had chosen me that year. And
Wow.
I got $100 check in the mail from Ernie and Bonnie Phillips.
Wow.
Wow.
And it came to my house. It arrived at my house the day before he passed away.
Wow.
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 Yeah.
Like I say, Ernie was the sweetest tempered guy that I ever met. I think him and Squire were two peas in a pod when it came to that.
What can I say about Ernie except he was a great guy, a great Christian, and of course everybody was Christians, but Ernie was in his own way. Just
Yeah.
you could
Yeah, he
you
lived
could tell it was a smile on his face,
Yeah, sure.
and a great friend.
Yeah.
Never a dull moment. What I remember most about him was when he sung and bounced.
Yeah.
And if you'll, of course, him and Hamlin had this thing going about short and big,
Yeah.
Right.
skinny and fat. Oh, did I say fat? Skinny and heavy.
Ernie, there's nobody could have followed John Perry except little Ernie.
I agree with that. I agree.
Wise he could do. I mean, he went up on, looked at me. He did something we'd never done before when we did that live album, and it hadn't been done since. They've been a lot of people hit it.
Yeah.
A lot of people go for it and hit it, but they've been a whole lot more to go for it and miss it. Well,
That's exactly right.
Again, just a regular guy, man. And he was a team player.
Ernie Phillips, what a true man of God. I always used to marvel at what he could do vocally when the Kingsmen would come anywhere in Kentucky and we'd go see him. Just an unbelievable talent. But once I got to know the man, once I became a member of the Kingsmen, and then one of the greatest thrills, one of the highlights of my career is getting to spend a little over a year on the road with Ernie. Ernie came back to the Kingsmen for a little over a year, right at a year, somewhere around there, while we were searching for a full-time tenor. He became full-time, part-time there for a little over a year. And once I got to know the man, I understood what I had been told over the years by other members of the Kingsmen. Boy, little Ernie's the real deal. Yes, he is. He was the real deal. He was a great man of God, and he loved him. My wife, Caroline, loved him. The kids loved him. Getting asked to sing at his homegoing service, being one of the Kingsmen asked to sing, was a highlight. Again, another highlight. Such an honor. But not necessarily a funny story, but a neat story about Ernie is the year or so that he was on the bus with us, filling in again. He found out that my wife made this decadent apple pie. I brought it to the bus one week, and he got to digging in that apple pie. He said, "Where'd this come from?" I said, "Well, Caroline made that." And he said, "Well, Caroline's going to have to make more of those." So I couldn't get one if I begged for it back then. But all Ernie had to do was send word that he wanted an apple pie, and magically Caroline would whip up one of those apple pies, and it would be sent back with me Wednesday, heading back to the bus. So, but love that man to death. Taught me a lot, just by his walk, but also in some of the times that we would get to sit around and have a little bit of quiet time and talk. And what he shared is invaluable. And I miss that man, love him, love his family. And I'll always miss you, but I'll always love you, Ernie.
Ernie Phillips. And I thought, man, that guy's, he's the same size I am. Well, I didn't know that was a full grown man.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a full grown man. And here I am, 10 years old. But we went to Indianapolis, Indiana, to the all night sing.
Yeah.
And man, back then, Larry Orell could put on a program like you couldn't believe. If you were a group during those days that was anybody, you were on that concert.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, they put them on last. And when I saw that rawness hit that stage, I had already seen the Blackwood Brothers, London, Paris, and the Apostles, the Rex Nealon Singers, the Happy Goodmans, Teddy Huffam and the Gems, the Hemphills, you name it, man. I'd seen them all. But when they walked out there, God's in the business of answering prayer. And I thought, wait, where is this coming from? But that particular night, I'm telling you, what ruined me to pieces was they said, we have a brand new album.
Okay.
And we have it tonight available at the table. And we're singing songs from it. Now, I just told you one of the songs.
Live Naturally.
God's in the business of love. Yeah. And when I went to the table, I told my dad, I said, I got to have that record. He said, come on, son, let's go. When we get to the table and standing on the record box, that little boy that I thought was a little boy.
Yeah.
I bought my copy of Live Naturally out of that record rack from the Little Giant.
Wow.
It was great. But ever since then, and Brian knows this, we've talked before about it. You have your favorite groups, man, but there are groups that changed your life.
Yeah.
You know, when I heard the cathedrals the first.
The little giant, little Ernie Phillips. What a guy. What a Christian man. What a great down to earth personality he had. But man, what a little singer. What a powerful little singer. He is the single singer that made me want to do what I've done for almost 40 years. Thank you, little Ernie, for being such a hero of the faith and such a mighty little man singing tenor. My goodness, when I first heard Shake Hands with a Poor Boy, when I heard The Old Ship of Zion, and when I heard When Crossing Time Shall Come, I knew that's what I wanted to be. So, little Ernie, God bless you. We miss you. We love you. I can't wait to see you and again and sing with you in that heavenly choir, buddy. We're gonna be skying high then. I loved little Ernie. He took my place one weekend, and I said, "Please try not to do too good this weekend because I got to come back." What a singer. What a guy. God bless little Ernie Phillips.
I talked to Brian
Yeah.
about this, like at Dad's funeral.
Okay.
But when he was, we basically, the last time that I visited him, he was in that bed. We basically planned, his funeral, and
Yeah.
so I sat down with him and was just started to ask him some questions. But a lot of these questions that you have asked me
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
back then, and I just wanted to add, I think one thing that one of the questions that I asked him was if you could have sung with any other group,
Yeah.
who would it have been?
Okay.
And he told me the Imperials. So
Wow.
so that was another. I,
Yeah.
I didn't know really that, like, growing up, because I'd always heard Willie Wynn,
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
like that, but yeah, and I'm looking at it, because it's funny. This sheet right here, I keep it in a. This is what I wrote down some stuff when we were
Yeah.
talking, and that was at the top of the list. The Imperials, and I can't even tell you who was with the Imperials back when he would have enjoyed listening in the 70s,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the 80s
Right.
too. But yeah, that was a group that he liked, and if he could have been with another group,
That would have been cool. Probably. Well, I think Russ Taff came in like 77. So probably would have been, I'm guessing Russ maybe, or even when Terry Blackwood was there.
Okay.
Terry Blackwood and Jim Murray.
Jim Murray, that's the tenor. Yeah, that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Murray.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
yeah.
cool. That would have been. I would have loved to heard your dad with the Imperials. That would have been
Oh,
cool.
It's a different sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been cool.
You're used to hearing him, the quartets he sang with. But anyway, I thought that was interesting.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yes, sir. That's right. Eric, we appreciate you joining us on this great episode honoring Ernie Phillips. Like I said, I've always appreciated your singing over the years with the Mark Trimble Trio, and just loved, and the quartet as well. Like I said, just two great tenor singers we talked about tonight, Eric Phillips and of course Ernie Phillips as well, and just been a fan of both of y'all singing over the years. And who knows, maybe one day again we'll get to hear Eric Phillips out there singing again. Just appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk with us tonight.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely, Eric.
Yeah.
Man, we appreciate you very much, and like I said, appreciate you taking time out of your schedule, and thank you for your service. You're in law enforcement, and thank you for your service. And I just always loved your singing and love you as an individual. And of course, to me, you're a kid. You're always going to be a kid to me. That's just the way it is. So, but
were you a music pastor at a church somewhere around like Charleston or Hurricane?
Yeah, right outside of Charleston. Yeah.
Okay. So I remember coming up there with Mark, and you were at at your church, or you were in that same community.
Yeah,
because I was surprised to see you there. I didn't know.
Yeah, it was a church, and we booked you guys on a Saturday night, and I think the little group that I had in the church did a couple songs or something. We did Glory Road together, and I think Mark just played the bass, and I sang Glory Road with you and the guys, and man, we had a great time. It was so funny because our sanctuary, we had to set chairs. We had to open up the sanctuary doors and put chairs in the lobby to hold everybody. And I'll never forget, because we had this one family. This is kind of off topic, but we had this one family that no matter where the back row was, they were going to sit on the back row. So they came. They were in church every Sunday. They were faithful people. They sat in the back row. Well, that night that Mark Trammell Quartet came and you were there, we had to move a back row. The back row is now in the foyer, and they sit in the back row back there.
The foyer.
No matter where the back row is, that's where we're going to sit.
That's funny.
But yeah, I remember that you guys came that night. We had a great time.
And this is not podcast, but I just want to tell you, and I may have told you this at the funeral, but Brian, you were an encouragement to my dad when he was going through a lot of his treatments, and we specifically talked about that because one time it was I was coming off the road, getting back into law enforcement.
Okay.
And this would have been around 2000, probably 2012, 13, somewhere in that time frame. And he had just had, I think, another surgery because when he first got diagnosed, it was a span of 10 or 11 years, and then it would come back. But along that time, you guys were communicating, apparently. Yeah. But he forwarded me an email that you had sent him, encouraging him, and how he started the email was, "Son, we both are facing some decisions coming up." And at this point, it was probably later than 13 because at this point he was trying to decide whether he was going to quit the chemo, and just let it take its course. And so it may not have been specifically me coming off the road at that time, but it was some kind of decision, and I would always go to my dad,
Yeah.
But he sent me that email that you had wrote him and just talked about decisions that were coming up, and obviously just going to the Lord in prayer about it.
Yeah.
I honestly can't remember. There was a verse in there, and then just encouraging words from you to him that he actually sent me as well. So yeah, I just want you to know that you were encouraging to him, and then of course him to me, and through you, and so.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Blessing to him, so for sure.
Thank you. He was a great man, and I loved him. He was, my wife. She didn't know anything. She came from a non-instrumental Church of Christ background where she didn't know the Kingsmen, had never heard of the Kingsmen, and I would say you got to listen to this guy. And as soon as she heard Ernie, as she met Ernie, she fell in love with him, and we sat down with your dad one time on the cruise. That year we had that little reunion and just talked to him. And I mean, he just always pointed people toward Jesus. He talked about Jesus and now he's on the streets of gold, and I love you being here tonight, Eric, but I wish I could have had your dad on here, And thank you so much for joining us. It's been an honor to talk to you and reminisce about your dad. And probably I would say, there's no stars. There's never been any stars in the Kingsmen. But if there ever was a star, one would have to be Ernie Phillips, because I think all these years later, like you said a moment ago, when that gentleman in 2025 is saying, "You're the grandson of Ernie Phillips," So the impact of his voice will go on forever because he's forever immortalized, for lack of better words, on these albums. But his kindness and his compassion and his encouragement will go even further than that on the lives that he's touched. So thank you for joining us, brother.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Behind the Crown podcast featuring Ernie Phillips tonight. A great tribute to him. You can listen to Behind the Crown podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and all major podcast streaming platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube and also on social media, Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Behind the Crown podcast with your hosts, Brian Hudson and Josh Griffin. If you would, please like, rate, and share this episode. Join us again for another episode of the Behind the Crown podcast.